This is the brand spanking new NEMO Tensor Extreme Conditions Ultralight Sleeping Pad. That's a mouthful. But how does it compare to the existing NEMO insulated tensor? Let's find out. For this review, since it isn't a long name, we are just going to call it the Extreme. So what is this?
This is a 4-season pad, which means it'll get you all year long. This is only considered a 3-season pad, which is not meant for the wintertime. It doesn't have a high enough R value.
But technically you could use it if you had some extra.
Which we'll go over in a little bit. The Extreme comes in all your normal sleeping pad sizes.
The mummy, the regular, long wide, and regular wide. So you should be able to find the style that you want. Both pads that we have are the regular wide size, which is 72 by 25 inches.
And why do you need a wide pad versus 20-inch pad?
Because it gives you more elbow room, and actually it's really nice to have.
It gives you more everything room. It gives you more elbow room, gives you more butt room, gives you more leg room. You just don't, and you don't find yourself falling off the edge in the middle of the night. These two pads are very similar, and there's a couple main differences, and one of them is thickness. If you look at the Extreme Edition, it's 3.5 inches thick, and the regular Tensor is only 3 inches thick. Another thing you'll notice is they're both kind of made with this kind of quilted pattern, so you get kind of these small chambers. But on the Extreme, the main chamber is just slightly bigger than the one on the regular Tensor.
So what makes this so special? It's the R value. And it comes in at 8.5, where the Ultralight is only 4.2.
When you're looking at the R values of sleeping pad, the higher number is going to keep you warmer. It's going to protect you from the cold ground. Another thing that sets the Extreme apart from the regular one, there's some suspended metal filament inside here. And on the regular, there's only 2 layers, but on the Extreme, they managed to squeeze in 4. So there's 4 layers of this film in there.
There's 2 things that really set these apart with the material, the thickness and actual material itself. The original Tensor is 20D on both sides, and we know how fragile that can be. We're super careful with it because we're always afraid we might puncture it. Whereas the Extreme is actually 40D on the bottom and 20D on the top. So it has that extra thickness and protection on the bottom. The material is actually different on these pads as well. The original is made from polyester, where the Extreme is actually a nylon.
One thing I noticed right away is just when you feel the pads, they just, even though they're both 20D on top, they actually feel different. And they actually look a little different too, but the feel of the Extreme, it just has that little more robust material feel to it.
It doesn't feel as like you have to be super gentle with it.
Yeah, and one thing about the original Tensor is it's almost translucent material, so you can see the insides of it. You're like,
well, not really see the inside,
you
but
can kind of see through it, which makes you feel like it's a little more fragile.
Yes. When it comes to noise, it is basically the same. Greg's rolling over, I'm still hearing it. And now for the weight. The Extreme actually is 1 pound 6 ounces, which is only 3 ounces more than the original. But when you're adding almost double the R value and going from a 3-season pad to a 4-season pad, that 3 ounces might not be that big of a deal for you.
Another thing you're going to notice, the original Tensor, if you look here, you can scrunch up the material in the bag. The bag is pretty big. And if you know why that's a good thing is when you roll this thing up, you don't have to totally get it exactly the perfect size to get it back in the bag. I love this one for that reason. Now, this guy, completely different story. The multiple times that I rolled this thing up, I have yet to get it in there the first time. The first time I did this, I was like, this is going to be perfect. I was cheering myself on. And then I shoved it in the bag. It literally was sticking halfway out of the bag. So maybe on version 2, they'll make the bag a little bit bigger. It's not going to weigh that much more, but it's such a pain to not be able to get it back in its original container.
Yeah.
Like with the original, the Extreme comes with its own pump sack. It's just like the original. And this thing plugs in here to the sleeping pad, and then you blow from a slight distance. It inflates the bag, you roll it up, and it shoves air in. It seems to take about 4 sacks worth of air, which it doesn't take long at all. And actually, if you time that against doing that with one of the little electric pumps,
it's much faster.
I don't know if it's any faster, but
I thought it was faster.
Yeah, it's pretty close either way.
The Extreme actually has a little bit different valves than the original.
Yeah, this guy here, when you're dealing with the valves, they work really well. They hold the air in, but what they do really well is they stick to each other. And so when you're trying to pull off the little valve just to pump it up or to let just a little bit of air out, you can accidentally pull both valves out, which will then let all the air out. And they fixed that with the Extreme version. The valves They're just a little looser. They're not loose by any means, but they're just enough to where you can just 2 fingers, boop, pop it right out. That works really well. Both of these bags also come with its own small repair kit, and they're located just inside the bag, or the storage bag, and they unfolds out. And in here you'll find a little tiny patch kit in case you were to get some holes. And we can't forget about the elephant in the room, the price. These things are incredibly expensive. I thought that this thing was crazy expensive when we first bought it. And they managed to make this one even more expensive. It is a better pad in the sense that it's, you know, got a higher R value, different materials and everything, but it's very expensive. So if you are in the market for either of these pads or for any pad in general, RAI will have pretty good sales on these, and literally last week these were 50% off. So if you can time your purchase right, you can get a really great pad for a pretty good price. Moving on to our experience with this pad, let's quickly go over what we think of this pad so you can compare it to this.
I really like this pad. I've had other pads in the past, and this is definitely my go-to pad. It's kept me comfortable, warm, and all around just a really great pad.
For me, this pad was good because I'm a 100% side sleeper and I don't touch the ground. You do touch the ground if you sit up, your butt hits the ground, but the second you lay down, whether you're on your back, you're on your side, you just don't hit the ground, and that's the 100% reason why I like this pad.
So we only have actually one of these pads, so Greg did the testing out of it.
Yeah, and of course we picked it up right towards the end of summer, so the first couple times I tested it, it was the low was in the 50s. Not the greatest test experience for a 4-season pad. But what I do want to know, or at least one thing I want to note, I was expecting to be super hot when I tested this when it was in 50s at night, and honestly it's kind of a neutral feel. It's not hot, it's not cold, it's just a nice neutral temperature.
Now that it's gotten colder, he's actually gotten to sleep with it when it's in the 30s.
Yeah, so the other night we went out and it got a low of, I think, 32, which actually is pretty cold. We started the night, it was in the mid 40s. When the temperature got down to about 37, I noticed that my head area was getting, or my upper chest area was getting cold.
And your quilt's 30-degree bag?
It is a 30-degree quilt.
Our quilt.
And the Tensor Extreme, I didn't notice any issues. The one thing that I will say is you're not feeling like heat on the bottom. When I throw my quilt on me, I can immediately feel that heat kind of like pressing up against me. But when I lay on this, I don't feel like massive amounts of heat pushing back up against me. It's just kind of a neutral.
But you're not feeling cold coming up either. So
that's correct, I'm not feeling cold. Keep in mind, this is only our first initial testing with this pad.
Who is this good for? Definitely winter campers.
If you're going to be a 3-season camper, or mostly summer, a little bit of shoulder season, honestly, I would stick with the regular insulated and then pair it with maybe one of these guys that you could throw in your gear if you're kind of hitting that tail end of shoulder season.
Could this be the only pad you own?
I think it could be if you were okay with a little bit of extra weight that you're going to be carrying all year round, because oftentimes in the summer pad you could get ready with a lighter pad, but it's really not that much more. It's going to cost a little more, but if it's going to be a one-time purchase, I think that could be a good option.
And it's more durable.
And it has that thicker bottom layer, so I think it's actually it could be a good pad. If you've happened to had experience with the Extreme Tensor, let us know how you did, like kind of what temperatures you did and how you thought it was down in the comments below. You can find us at exploretrekadventure.com. Go watch this video next, and we'll see you next time.